Before we start the episode, if the content of the show is something that has been resonating with you, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who you feel may need to hear it. This helps the show grow and helps us keep bringing this content out into the world. My guest today is Rebecca Barron, and this is one of the heaviest interviews I've done, the subject matter. She is going to recount some experiences in her life in which she was involved in a trauma-based mind control program. Some of us might even know this as the MKUltra program. Whether it officially was MKUltra or not, I don't know. I don't know if there is an official MKUltra program, but more and more when you are involved in information like the type that is shared on podcasts like this, when you get into spirituality and awakening, this concept that there is not only child trafficking, but energy harvesting going on, that you could say, well, okay, child trafficking is terrible enough, especially the sex trafficking trade, but what they're doing at an even deeper level is more nefarious and maybe even harder to believe. This idea that there are non-human entities that are influencing human beings that are in power, in fact, in a way that they're like parasites, controlling these human beings that are in power. And even furthermore, these humans that are in power possibly have been traumatized themselves in a way that would sever their connection with their own heart. And that's what allows them to do things or to commit acts that are inhumane, non-human, non-compassionate, the murdering of women, children, men, other human beings, things like that. And she was a part of this, and she accounts how when she was younger, she was brought into this program and what they did to her. And what they did to her was the same sort of thing that is going on with humanity as a collective, in the way that they will induce fear, bombard us with a fearful event, get us to pull away, get our hearts to pull away from, I don't even know how to put it, from our daily interaction with the world. So then we're more easily influenced to behave in a way that these handlers of not only individuals, but the handlers of society, the global community as a whole, and then they can steer the course of history in a way that suits their means. And what suits them is the collection of energy from us. Robert Monroe called this energy louche, and I hear a lot of people anymore calling this energy louche. This energy that these beings are harvesting from us is the goal. And they do that through inducing these fearful states. And that it just is, as hard as this story can be to believe anymore, it only makes sense to me because the world is so backwards and so perfectly designed to keep us in fear, and how every institution seems to be designed to keep us from discovering who we are and our own personal power, to keep us sick, to keep us in fear, to keep us ignorant of what we are, that it's hard to deny that there would be something like this going on. And the design is so perfect and far-reaching that all I can think is that it must be something outside of being a human to be such an expert at how to manipulate humanity, because we as humans, we're down in it. It's hard for us to see ourselves clearly, but when you're sitting outside of it somehow in another dimension and have been watching this since the beginning, possibly something that has even manipulated our DNA and has created us, it would be easy to see how, if you are an expert in human behavior, how you could manipulate that behavior. And if we're just energy sources for these things, just like in the Matrix, then they have designed this system perfectly, and it's been very efficient. But what's going on now, as a lot of us know, it seems to be crumbling. People are waking up to this, and those institutions are crumbling. I hope that comes through in the interview. There was a lot to cover, and I don't know if I did a great job in extracting all of that from her story, but she has written a book called One Set of Footprints that outlines her story in more detail and probably does a better job than I did at outlining her story in the interview. So, without further ado, I hope that you enjoy my interview with Rebecca Barron. Rebecca is the author of the book One Set of Footprints, and that book lays out an extraordinary life experience, some heavy experiences, some traumatic experiences, but it seems as though they led you to a life of greater positive influence for yourself and other people too. What it involved is a program called MKUltra that, as I was talking to you before, saying, I think a lot of people who would listen to a show like this are going to at least be peripherally aware of something like MKUltra, but they may not be certain what that means. So let's start there with your story. What is that program and how did you get involved in it?
Okay. Well, I can only go, I don't know the actual, I just know from my experiences, but I assume there's many different types of programming that is done. But the programming that was done to me as a child was basically to split me from myself. So trauma induces, we are beings of light, a huge amount of light, and that light comes into the body. Our body is created by our parents. And that light holds information. It's connected to the core. It understands what life is actually about. So people in this reality that don't want that light to be projected out into this reality, because it doesn't just affect the person, we affect everybody. So what MKUltra does is that they induce so much trauma in me, I started to separate from my body, to keep me small, to be frightened of myself. So the trauma that they did was to be very frightened of who I am, so very frightened of my own light, to create perceptions of the physical reality that it's an unsafe place to express me through, like express through my body, make me feel very worthless, low confidence, low self-esteem, and yeah, just be frightened of who I am and reality itself. And to have hooks into me to control me. So when trauma happens, the trauma that took place, the energy of the person that was traumatizing me, also their energy gets hooked into me. So part of my healing was to get myself into the body, and then to all the people that had traumatized me as a child, to get their energies out of me as a child, so I can be in my body and feel safe in my body. So it was over many years, and basically I had a handler. That handler knew my parents, and he was connected to the royal family, the British royal family. So they set up what programming that I went on. So I was on a lot of the program was a lot of rape, a lot of traumatizing me through sexual abuse, seeing lots of death, rituals, satanic rituals, and their trauma was so big. I had no idea. I had no idea. It was not until in my early 30s that I started to fall into my emotions, and then as my emotions allowed my emotions to come through more, me connecting more to myself, that the memories started to come back. So we all have two frequencies. We have male frequencies, our mental mind, and we have our light. And we have to connect up to our mental mind, because our mental mind is there to decode who we are. It's there to read who we are. So when I started to fall into my emotions, allow my mind to read me, then I started to get these memories back. But I had no idea up to that point.
I was wondering about that because I just didn't know if I was distracted while reading the book or I just didn't get it, how these came back to you. Because I was going to ask then so you were very young when the handlers or handler how did you meet the handler?
His daughter was my best friend. So they lived in the village. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
the handler and his wife were friends with the family. Yeah.
Okay.
So I used to spend a lot of time around there, and so yeah, they knew the family. They knew my mum and dad.
And were, I guess, then working for the program? Who would you say that the handler was working for? You know what I mean?
There's a little clues. Yeah. So his answers were to Queen Elizabeth.
Okay.
I
Directly.
have remember a memory came back. I was with the handler at the royal palace, and there was
Hmm.
many members of the royal family, and including the queen, and she had like the rule, and they were basically discussing what program I would be put on. And so it was the Queen Elizabeth had control over what program I was put on, and she was in there, and I had programming with Prince Philip. So there was a program room. So where the handler worked, which was at the BT Towers in London, I would go with him to work, and there was like a tiny box prison-like room at the BT Towers, and I would go in there and receive horrendous treatment, basically trauma, induced trauma, all different types. And Prince Philip, I had a memory. Prince Philip was in that room with me, and then there was also programming done by the Queen herself. So they were directly involved in the programming, but also from what I could understand through the memories that came back, actually they had the power of what programming I went on.
If you don't, what is the end goal for them to be doing this to people? What do they get out of it?
Well, I don't know all the programs. I just know me of what I went through. But basically, the light that I am, the light that I have, is an enormous source of battery for them, because these people are not fully human. So they're very heartless. They don't have light. So you've got light running through your body that keeps your body alive, same as me. They don't have that. They're parasitic. And so they need to steal other people's light from them. So when they traumatize me, they hook their energy in, and then they can siphon off the energy, and that goes into the system, because they work very differently from human beings. So we're self-sufficient and potentially can be self-sufficient. They're not. They work for their colony. And so for me, it was to siphon off the light, and also to get me so scared of myself that I wouldn't look at myself or heal. And then, because in our hearts we have a huge amount of wisdom and knowledge and understanding about reality, about who we are, about how we create reality, that actually will help us evolve on a really fast rate when we really start to listen to ourselves. So that knowledge, when people really start to understand that, they will cease to exist, because they can only work in a certain frequency range. And so when people actually bring in their own light, rather than relying on energies outside of themselves to tell them what reality is, they lose power. So I think their ultimate goal is to stay in this reality, because they look human, but they're not. They're entities. In that body is an entity, which is the reptilian. So it looks like a lizard type thing, but on legs. And they were created to take over human beings on this planet, and they don't have a home as such. It's like they have to parasite off us. So they're basically fighting for their survival, and to keep control and manipulation of the whole of the human race. So these beings that look human, that aren't, they're all in the governments. They created that, the governments, the religion, the medical establishments. They're everywhere, kind of thing. So they want to keep that control. They want to keep us away from the knowledge that we are the ones that create our reality. Yeah. They want to keep
Yes.
us away from that empowerment, but everything that happens in your adult life is from your own energy system. They want to keep people in a reality where you're looking to the government to, like, oh, change my reality, make my reality better. Yeah. So you're giving your power away, or religion, or something like that, where actually one's got the power.
So the
Yeah.
point of the trauma is that we're a source of energy. That's what
So
they're harvesting.
yeah, the source of energy, kind of, obviously I'm understanding myself and healing myself, and through that, what they do is horrendous, because they're not human, so they're inhumane. But the root of also that is organs and blood, and it's horrendous, because their bodies are much weaker than ours, and they transplants, and they feast on the life of innocence. It's horrendous. It's really dark and awful, horrendous stuff.
It is, and as I said before, there is more that is coming to the light to the masses. I see all the time conversations about this, even with media personalities, at least in the States, that were pretty mainstream, talking about things like this demonic realm that seems to be in possession of these people in power, politics, and the other institutions that everybody's dependent on, the church, even healthcare, things like that, to keep people sick. So I can see, and I think a lot of people do, how yes, they're traumatizing people on an individual level, but also on the masses as a whole, because it seems that everything is to keep us in a constant state of anxiety and fear. And the only way that reality even makes sense at all is if that's what's going on, because everything just seems to be so ass backwards to what it should be. If you don't mind, could you get specific on some of the horrendous things that happened to you so we have an idea as to what it is we're dealing with?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So, what they did to me when I got the memories back, it kind of helped me understand why reality is the way it is, because they actually do it on mass mind control. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you one memory that I got back. I was in the program room, and they were bringing in animals in and killing the animals, and I, little girl, I'm about 5 or 6, just watching, petrified, couldn't move, watching and listening to this animal die. And this went on for a long time. And then the next part was I was with the handler, and we got into the back of the car, his car, and he was driving around London. And as we were driving around London, he stopped at a block of apartments. We walked up to the block of apartments. I was kind of traumatized. You kind of like a step away from the body. So I was in a state of consciousness that I wasn't fully conscious. But when I got the memory back, to always go up the stairs, and we went to an apartment, and Jimmy Savile opened the door. He was very connected to the royal family, this man. And in that, the handler left, and I got undressed, and it was in the living room, and there was looked like a pentagon on the floor. The room was very dark. There was candles, and he asked me to lay on the floor. So I lay on the floor, and he started doing this very sort of weird dance, very odd, very, and out came, because I was away from my body. I could see from a different perspective, even though you kind of, the consciousness shrinks into the body. I shrunk into the body. I actually saw beings walk out of him, which I knew of, what were called the Watchers. And then he raped me. He raped me while these beings were watching. And then after the rape, he kneeled down by my head, and he told me that I had killed those animals, that I had murdered those animals. And then when that memory came back, it takes a long time, because it really comes through the body, and the feelings, the physical feelings, the emotions, everything comes through. So it's like going through it again. But then it also occurred to me that this is what happens, because when you're traumatized, your heart, which is your light of view, actually retracts and goes down further, moves away from the body, moves away from the mind, because your mind is the decoder of your light. So when the heart gets scared, it retracts back. And then the mind is very vulnerable. It loses its truth. It loses guidance, loses oneself. So then the mind is traumatized, goes through abandonment and fear of that. And then how we decode reality is through oneself. But when the heart is gone, the mind is left vulnerable to only decode what it's been told on the outside of itself. So he was telling me that I'd murdered those animals. Not that I believed it, but I understood, like when we have big events, terrorist attacks, people get scared. They retract back into their body, their consciousness retracts back. And then the news tells us quite quickly what had happened, although the heart holds truth. So the reason the trauma is there is so that the lie that they're telling is easier to believe, because the mind is very vulnerable, because the truth of self is left, it's retracted back into the body. And then I understood what part of the mind control, the mass mind control we've been under as a mass consciousness. They need to, so basically they scare the individual. They scared me, frightened me so much, traumatized me so much, that the truth of me was suppressed down into my body, where I couldn't read it anymore. My mind couldn't read it. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry that happened to you. That's so heavy and terrible. But so they're doing to you on an individual scale what they then do to the masses as well. Why do you think that they single out certain people individually? What is the point of that? Is that to work out their process on an individual and then apply it to the masses? Or I have no idea. Why would they single individuals out?
For me, I was a battery. So they also planned the relationships later on in life, which I went into those relationships unbeknown to me. So all the energy I have, they siphoned off. So every time I'd give the energy to the individual I was with, it would go into the system. So I was a battery
Hmm.
that they wanted to keep because they don't have light. And they obviously saw that my light was strong, and they were like, well, utilize her. We'll utilize that light for ourselves, because they're literally on a level of frequency that is like hell.
Yeah.
So when they get light, it makes them feel better. It's like a drug to them.
So from a certain perspective, it's, I don't know how to put it tactfully. Like I said, they need it to survive. The way that we will siphon energy, excuse me, off of other living beings to survive. So it isn't even that they don't hate humanity. We just happen to be a source of life for them. It's just as simple as that.
And they think we're a piece of shit at the same time. Yeah. But
So they do.
oh God, yeah. They have, so the way they've been created, but it's how they've been created, because they've got a hierarchy system where when people are connected to their heart, there's no hierarchy system. We know we're all one. We know everyone's important. They have the hierarchy system comes from them. That hierarchy system where they were created, they know they're not part of the creation, natural creation like us and like the animals on Earth and everything. They've come from labs. So because they come from labs, they've been created by a being outside of themselves. This is where religion comes from. They worship that being outside of themselves. They worship for physical things. So when they do satanic rituals and they kill innocents and babies, and they're asking for more power and control in this reality. So when a satanic ritual is taking place, it's the reality that they were created in, which are called the Watcher reality. They're bringing that reality closer to our reality. So they're merging realities, because that reality is at a different frequency. And we see it everywhere. It's filtered. And once you really start to wake up, it's filtered everywhere in this reality. The government systems, the religion, we wouldn't have these systems if it wasn't for these beings. They created it. So they certainly us, because we've actually got the power, and they don't. They're parasites. Can you imagine being
Yeah.
parasite? They're always on survival. They're not self-sufficient. So they know they're very weak, and in order to get away from that weakness or even face it, they can't. They have to create that I'm bigger. Like somebody who's got a massive ego. It's because it creates from weakness, and this is what
Right.
big beings are. They're not connected in the natural way that we're connected. They're not connected to source. So when we die, our consciousness retracts and we go back to that oneness. Well, they've got nowhere to go back to, because they don't have the heart, because they're created from traumatized human consciousness with technology involved. So that when they die, they don't go anywhere. They're gone. Yeah. So they do live for hundreds of years though, but they don't have a natural home. They're just parasites.
So do you have any insight into, because it sounds like they were something, a state of awareness that had fallen into this. They were just absolutely created out of technology or some unnatural means, and now they are a force that just does this, is siphoning energy off of something that I guess is still connected to source. Do you have any insight into their origin? How did they get to be this way?
Well, yeah, so you have to look back at who created them, and who created them was these watchers. So these watchers are these massive giants. They just look like humans, but giants. They used to be on Earth. They came,
Hmm.
so there's like giant stories and everything, but they were dying and they went out of frequency. So they didn't stay connected to their hearts, and they lost contact with themselves, and they started to rely on technology. And in order to stay, they realized through the technology that they needed to siphon off other realities in order to stay alive. So the bloodlines of this reality, so those, basically, from what I can gather, they stole DNA from here, a traumatized DNA that was disconnected from the heart, and they experimented on that DNA, and out came the reptilians, the different reptilians. So reptilians can fall in line with the mental minds of people that are not connected to their hearts, and they've got like bloodlines. And so reptilians are just basically the parasites for the watchers.
Okay.
So they're kind of like the worker bees kind of thing. So they don't have a home, but they probably feel Earth is their home, but they weren't created naturally. They were created in labs.
Yeah. And so I've heard, I mean, my introduction to this concept that there were reptilians was David Icke. So I'm sure that when you hear what he's saying, you're experiencing directly the type of thing that he talks about in terms of the royal family for sure being reptilians and other. I've heard multiple things, but say that there are 13 bloodlines on the planet essentially that are kept pure in this sense. Is that something that you've heard or is true to you, that they have to keep this bloodline pure to a state to be able to what, channel this reptilian energy or this watcher energy and maintain control of the grid here, the matrix?
So the reptilian energy, it goes within the DNA. So you'll probably find a lot of people have been affected by the reptilian energy because we've become disconnected to our hearts because of the
Mm-hmm.
trauma. And when a mind is disconnected from heart, it has to go on survival, that part of the mind, that part of that neuron. So this is how reptilians work. So they can merge with somebody with that brain, but they keep it in the bloodlines because everything, the knowledge, everything that happens in your life is actually goes into your DNA. Everything that takes place in your life. So the knowledge is stored within the DNA in these bloodlines. I don't know how, I haven't researched that, like how many bloodlines, I don't know. And it's easy for the reptilian to merge with that line, with that bloodline, with that DNA. They like that DNA. So they like to go, not that everybody is a reptilian or hybrid on that family line, but also that will coincide with that is that the females on that line will be very disempowered. The light will be disempowered. They don't want strong feminine energy on that bloodline. That would overturn the DNA, you see. So it's masculine dominated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you and others were then singled out because you had, say, a stronger light. Is that kind of what you're saying with the individuals who do get taken into the program? Do they exhibit something that is not normal, atypical, stronger light?
For me, because I can only base on me, and I have people have come to me for help. So it's yeah, I think I was singled out because of my light. But I assume, if you look at the bloodline, they all go through the programming. So some are going to become part of the political system. Some people are going to be part of the banking system. They need people to keep the system alive. So they can't have hearts. So trauma
Mm,
detaches them from their own heart consciousness. So they need people still in creating that system because we naturally evolve and we should evolve out of these systems because they're very manipulative and everything. So they can't have people who are going to evolve the system. They want the systems the same, the religious system, the banking, so all these systems the same. So when I've looked at politicians, like main politicians, they're not human. There's a reptilian in there, in that body. They've been taken over. So, and what I find is that reptilian, that host that holds the reptilian has been through programming. So obviously they weren't used for their light. They're used for, all right, you're going to be a member of a parliament and we're going to use you to keep the system up. So I think there's different programs,
yeah,
different
which makes
people.
sense. And I
Yeah.
don't know if I just heard that from you or someone else. That was an insight that I hadn't thought about before. These people, individuals who are leading these institutions that are corrupted, they themselves have been traumatized and separated from their hearts, so they can then at least support and push these inhumane acts, these heartless acts on the masses.
Yeah. Yeah. Often.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Which just makes sense. And as you said before, then each time we have an event like, say, a 9/11, or even with the latest in the States, the Charlie Kirk event, where something traumatic happens, something frightening where everybody gets their attention put on this event, is that an energy harvest that's going on as they do that? While they also manipulate other things in the background while everybody's attention is focused on this event, they're harvesting the what I've been heard called as loosh, this energy from us, and manipulating some event in the background. Each time something like that happens, is that what's going on?
I suppose it's to keep people away, that they are creating their own individuality, and to keep people away from their own heart consciousness, then they need to distract people. So obviously there's, okay, they're doing something over here and they're doing something over there, but the ultimate is to keep you away from your own life, your own
Hmm.
your own heart, your own wants, what you want to create, questions about your life. People can be asleep not because they're scared, probably scared of what the government are doing. It's actually because they're scared of their own life and look at themselves and how their life is. So when people really start looking at themselves and start realizing that they are the creator of their life, well, that's a type of empowerment that can't be taken away. They realize, I'm in a school and I'm learning and I'm understanding and I'm evolving. And then the governments and everything they do is irrelevant. It doesn't affect your life. So this
Yeah.
illusion that they have a lot of power starts to drop. So they need the attention. They need a lot of attention, because when we give the attention, physical reality is created from masculine energy. So we've got two energies. We've got female energy and masculine. So your body, the building blocks of my body and your body, everybody's body, or physical reality, a tree, a bug, everything is created from masculine energy. That's what creates physical reality. And all the life force that runs through it is female energy. So when we place our attention onto areas of reality that they want us to place, say like Charlie Kirk or whatever, our mental mind, we give our mental energy away. And what I see, like the CIA, the governments and everything, they take that energy because it creates physical reality. And they've learned how to create physical reality outside of this reality. So the more we focus on what they're doing, the more they are taking that energy off us, where that mental energy of ours is here to create what we want to create. Yeah. So we're giving our
Yeah.
power away. It may not feel that, but most people don't realize how powerful they are. So when people
Yeah.
come to me and like, I've got this challenge, or I'm sick, I've got this illness, I'm having this problem, I never look at somebody and go, oh, the government is because of what the government has done. It's all to do with their own frequency. Yeah. So when people
Yeah.
start to realize that they're creating their own individual reality, then what's the point of focusing on the government? It's like it's them. And that's what the church and the government do. It's like, because they want our focus on something else outside of us rather than focus on self. Because focus on self will actually make the changes in our life.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense when I think about everything. Especially the church. I mean, at least in the brand of Christianity that I've gotten where I live, it's you're born a sinner. You're born separate from God, I guess, in this state of sin, and that the only way you could get back to God is to basically say the magic words that Jesus Christ is my personal Lord and Savior, and my only way back to God is through Him, not through a personal connection to the divine source that I came from anyway, and that I need to look to the leaders of the church for how to have a relationship with God and how to behave here, and never to be looking within. So when you say that, and that it only makes sense to me, and that's a big one. And that was probably one of the maybe the earliest institutions that had pulled this illusion, the wool over the people's eyes, would be the church. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. The reason that God is depicted as male is because they want to keep their DNA alive. So when somebody worships religion, your light, who you are, starts to worship the DNA, because that's the masculine side. So you start to worship a construct in your mental mind, which is religion. And that keeps their DNA alive. That keeps them running, because we start to worship. If you worship God, your heart starts to worship the masculine mind. So it keeps us small, insignificant. It stops us realizing our own empowerment, who we are. And it stops us taking responsibility for our life. It
Hmm.
really does. It's like, oh, God will sort it out. Well,
Yeah.
actually, you're the one that's creating. And obviously, children are not creating their reality, but their reality comes from their parents. So their parents' frequency has a huge effect on what they experience in their life. But when we get to around teenage years, we start to move away from our parents, and then we come more into creating our own reality through the energies, frequencies that we have within and what we've picked up along the way through our parents. But yeah, the reason God is depicted as male is because the DNA is masculine energy, and they want us to worship the DNA, because the DNA, they don't want to change, because they sink in with that DNA, and that DNA works for them because it leaves the feminine disempowered and us alleviating a masculine energy that actually is very abusive, very manipulative, very controlling, and holds all the institutes that keep us reality the way it is.
What would you say are the characteristics of masculine energy and feminine energy so then we could drum up those frequencies ourselves and help to rise, bring the feminine back?
Well, feminine energy, or I like to say the light of you, because I'm a man. I don't want men to think. Yeah, so the light of you. And masculine energy is a fantastic decoder, and men pick up frequencies more easily. So someone says I'm really empathic and I can feel. Masculine energy decodes frequencies, so you're able to feel energies, feelings. So the light of you runs through the emotions of oneself and the wants of your life. So the wants and the emotional life of oneself. And masculine is there to read it, to decode it, feel it, and also protect it. So you protect oneself. If you protect oneself, you value oneself, you love oneself. You not only just love yourself, but you love everybody that's connected to your heart. So everybody's connected to your heart, you know, your wife, your children, your family, everything. And people end up loving politicians and they've got no heart. So they're giving all their love over to people that are not meant to be in this reality. They're intruders. They have a body that was once human, but that they've been so traumatized, an alien is in there, a being's in there. So, or religion, for instance. So when you love yourself, the first point of call is to love yourself. What we're healing is getting back to that unconditional love for ourselves. So if you're hurting yourself, if you're pulling yourself down, if you're telling yourself that you can't do what you really want to do, if you're not listening to your heart, then it suppresses who you are. So it's like being open to your wants, to how you actually feel about things. It's relaxing, because obviously parts of our mind has taken a lot of energy, our reality. We have to work, we have to look after the house, the kids, everything like this. And that can take us out of frequency from our hearts. So we have to learn to relax, and then we connect more to the frequency of our heart, which is generally far more relaxed and needs to be heard and felt, so we can get the direction, because our heart is the direction. We have a unique path that's unique to each individual, and our heart shows us that path, but we have to listen to that, because we're also fighting a DNA. Yeah. So your dad would have been placed his DNA, placed all the information of he's done, and you would have taken that on. And we're here to do it better. Each generation is to do it better, and we can only do it better when we listen to our hearts, because our heart will show us a better reality.
Yeah. And I feel that that is going on with each successive generation. I see my own kids. I was a school teacher for about 8 years in the middle school. So these were from kindergarten up to fifth grade. So from 5-year-olds to 10-year-olds. And I even had a few of the older kids, even older than that. But my point is I see that. I see their I don't want to say rejection, but yeah, they're in a sense they're rejecting certain institutions and ideas about specifically homosexuality and the acceptance of that and the acceptance of just other things that weren't accepted in previous generations. The rejection of the idea that I'm going to go to college and I'm going to have a free ticket to a good life because of that. They're coming in seeing these institutions that are already crumbling and are making no sense. And I think my generation of parents, at least I hope, are also saying, yeah, that's not how you have to do things. The way that we did it is not the way you have to do things. So
Yeah.
are you seeing that too in the masses, that on the hopeful side, that this is occurring?
Oh God, there's a huge evolution that's taking place. So the reason that people are waking up, the reason I woke up, the reason that everyone's waking up is because there's people are are connecting up and their light's coming through, and everyone who connects up to themselves, you're not just knowing yourself, or you're actually bringing light into the reality, so it makes it easier for other people to wake up and see. It's we wouldn't be having this awakening. So I see it's like Mother Earth, the planet we're on, is waking up, and the people are bringing that light in. We're following the planet. The planet is going through a huge evolution, and we're following that frequency. So it's happening because the planet is waking up and is getting rid of all the frequencies of abuse, manipulation, deception. And that is because the light is coming in and we're getting rid of all that energy. So we get to see the truth of reality, truth of oneself, and then the truth of what we're living in. So although it seems like a really yucky time because people could be like waking up to this, what I tell people, like, I had trauma in me and I was walking around for 30 odd years not knowing that trauma. I didn't know I'd been abused in the way that I did or anything. I had no idea. But when the trauma was being released, I could feel it, I could smell it. I was like there, and it was coming out through my skin because I was healing. Yeah. And that's what I see of the planet. The light's coming through so much through the people, through the planet, that we can see it everywhere. It's because the planet is healing, because we're healing. That's why we can see it. Where before, generations ago, no one was awake because it was so buried deep into the darkness, just like the trauma I had. We just didn't see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, this planet is healing big time, which is
And
amazing.
I always ask this to people, and in fact, the last interview, she kind of introduced me to the idea of the Yuga and said we're in the Kali Yuga, which is a concept that the universe itself inhales and exhales, and that right now we're in the Kali Yuga, which is the depths of, say, consciousness, which in terms of the inhale and the exhale, we're at the lowest point of the exhalation, at the point right before we're ready to breathe in again, and the consciousness rises. And she was saying then that this is just a natural cycle, this lowering and raising of consciousness, this sleepfulness and wakefulness that we're all talking about, is something that will always go on, because she's like, you can't really stop it. How do you stop winter? We're just in a season now of what seems to be, like you said, this yucky period of time where it looks like the world's going to end, but really we're just at this lowest point of the exhalation where it's about to rise again, and it just seems chaotic. Could pull back to a million-mile viewpoint, you'd see how it's really, we're entering the new age.
Yeah, I've never heard of that concept. I kind of see it as we should have never been invaded, but we've learned hugely from it, of like
Hmm.
deception, manipulation, and all that, and then how to heal from it. But I didn't get, from my understanding, which is always changeable because you learn something new and then that understanding gets bigger.
Hmm.
What happened shouldn't have happened. It's not a natural. We shouldn't have, because the beings, these reptilians, are not natural. They're not natural. They shouldn't have come in, but they did because of the innocence of us. We had to learn, but we learned from it. But I don't feel that. But it is natural that we evolve. It is natural that we breathe. It is natural, and the whole process is to get us to stop understanding that.
Yeah, and I always have that question too. Like, if the philosophy is that we have to have darkness because this is a dimension of contrast, was there always going to be some entities like the Watchers, whether it was specifically the Watchers or reptilians or some other thing that provided us with this darkness and this experience of waking up to ourselves? Because it goes back to the concept again that in 3D reality, it's a dimension of contrast. That's how we learn, through contrast. You can't know one thing without the other. So there was always going to have to be something to provide that for us. And in our particular timeline or reality, it's the fact that these parasites have taken over. Does that kind of make sense to what you've been shown as you view things?
The thing is, I see us that we can learn enormously. That after the healing is done and what we're doing, we're reconnecting back up to our minds, to our bodies, so we can experience ourselves fully through the physical reality. That even before the Watchers or the Reptilians, we were learning anyway through the frequencies, and we won't learn through trauma, we'll learn through light. And we don't
Yeah.
need trauma but obviously we have had to learn it. We've come in because our reality been infiltrated. that we can learn enormously through the light of who we are. I suppose that we won't really understand it until we're there, and how much learning we can have through that light. I did
Yeah.
a remote view, and I connected to humans on Earth, but they hadn't been affected. They live very close to the center of Mother Earth, and they have never been affected by the trauma, because when Mother Earth receded from the planet, she stayed in the core of herself. So they didn't lose the planet like we lost the planet. And that was the biggest trauma that happened when these ETs came in, or whatever you call them, traumatized, whatever, reptilians. The planet retracted back. So we lost the planet. We lost our connection, not only to ourselves, but to the planet. And that was a huge loss of self, which people have to heal. But there's beings in the center of the planet, near the center of the planet, it didn't lose. And I went down, I visited them a few times. And the way they see reality, they're so connected up that they see nothing's real physical. Everything is kind of many different layers of frequencies, like showing me a fish. But I could see all the different layers of frequencies, and they didn't talk either. They sang, but they didn't talk to each other. They didn't have language, because every frequency was communication. So I could see all my frequencies and all the vibrations, and how my vibrations affecting the fish, and it was just huge communication. I was learning enormously in that, and that freedom to feel safe, and that I'm a being of light, I'm an energy, lots of different frequencies that's vibrating, and it's just a massive communication to the world around me, that fully connected to Mother Earth, the planet I'm on, and to the fish that it was a huge amount of learning, so we grow through the understanding of ourselves. I don't feel that we need darkness in order to grow, although we've had to learn enormous amount from the darkness. Yeah, we've had to learn a lot from that, but I don't believe that we have to go into darkness.
Yeah. On a personal level, I feel that too, that even if it was something that was planned, I think the time for that is past. Where if it was something that was necessary, we've outgrown it. We don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
So if there are then souls living within the planet, what do you think about the idea then that as souls we choose to come here for certain experiences of contrast for our own growth, that could a soul choose to have an experience in the inner earth with those beings that the humans you said you'd seen? Or is this layer of reality kind of a soul trap? I hear that too, that we're trapped in these cycles. Do you see this as some sort of a loop that we're stuck in?
When I look at people, my work is to look at them, and people want to know why they've come and everything. It's always a choice. And
Hmm.
our reality is a very important reality, because it seems like the first physical reality that was created by human consciousness, and we've got to get it right, because there's many, many realities out there. And so what's happened to us can't happen. So we're trying to resolve it and heal from it, which we are doing. It's like we've won already. We're on that path, understanding healing and how to bring our light in. That will affect all the other realities. So I do see that we have a choice, and that choice, one decides. We decide to come here. I haven't met anybody who's forced to be here.
Okay. And it's just a question of curiosity, because at this point you get so much information that I don't know anymore. I'm in a state of, not that I ever knew, but at least I fooled myself into thinking I had a clear idea as to what's going on. But anymore, there's so much conflicting information that I don't have a clue. And I was just, with the podcast, hopefully trying to get enough people on here to where we could paint a picture for those people that may be on the fence about things or looking for truth, that there would be this, I don't know how to put it, a paradigm or a model of truth that comes out of it that they could then apply to their life and guide them towards a life of connection and peace. So that's why I ask questions like that. But
Yeah. They're good questions to ask. And I think that's the thing, is what I teach people to connect to themselves, because your truth is that's got to be the biggest voice of all. And that's individual. Each individual has that. So where I read people and understand people from the heart is connected to the planet you're on, to past lives, to the oneness within, which is in every cell of your body, everything. And what we've done, we've given other people outside of ourselves bigger voice to tell us what reality is. And everyone's going to perceive it differently. There's going to be different information, but ultimately, one voice, your voice, is the most important to you. So my voice is the most important to me. And it's to guide people back to their own hearts so they decipher what their reality is. Yeah, so we're not getting it from the outside, because that's what religion done. Yeah, we'll get it from God, tell us what reality is. People have got to wake up. They are their own internal source of knowledge and wisdom within them. And it's to rely on that, to trust that, to believe in themselves. So that wisdom opens up and that light of every cell comes through, and the mind decodes that light rather than what everybody else is saying, because there is so much manipulation and so many lies. And I'm not surprised people are confused and like what to believe. And that's why we, it's like the more light comes in, you can hear like if people are lying or stuff. But the truth of self is most important. When you're really true to yourself, true about your life, how you actually feel, then the more truth you entwine into you, because the mind likes to lie, likes to keep you away, likes to tell you false things because it's scared of feelings or creates identities or whatever. So the more true you become to yourself, and the more truth you'll see in reality. So it's staying that connection to self. So if you don't know and you're not believing anything, it's to believe self and what is your heart saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems as though we're being, at least in my experience, being pushed to come to the realization that that's all we have. I know I brought up to you through our conversations before the show this idea of the digital ID that seems to be coming online, because I was seeing it in the UK and I just I just feel it's headed to the States. Why would it not be? We're going to be faced with a choice that just seems impossible. And if that gets instituted, I mean, what are we going to rely on to look to other than our own selves? It's because it's like, okay, take the digital ID, and then I have stepped right across the threshold into the prison. I may have some comfort, but no freedom. If I don't accept it, I'll be an outcast from society. I don't know. I just go through my mind. If I'm faced with this choice, I don't know what I do. I mean, I have children and things like that. So who are you going to look to? We're going to have to start looking inward and learning what that means to look inward and listen to our hearts and guidance. That seems to be, because you're talking about when you're doing readings or remote viewings, we haven't talked about this ability that you have to do that. So this is the type of thing that you're teaching people to do when they come to you.
Yeah.
So have you always known you've had this type of connection, that you could read things in this way, or when did that come online for you?
I had awakening in my late 20s. So before I was very much asleep. And then I was abroad. I just got married and I was on a desert island in a beautiful island of Malaysia. And literally, we didn't have smartphones back then, and it was like rainforest and water, and that's all I had. And I'd always before that, I'd never learnt to relax. And in the state of relaxation and also confronting insecurities I had, really insecurities about intelligence. I didn't think I was very bright. And when I kind of confronted that, I started to look at myself basically in the mirror, something magical happened, and it was like my heart just exploded, and it exploded in a good way. And all this light came through and lots of information. And it went on for about 6 weeks. And it was like my mind was like trying to hold on. My heart was like telling me lots of stuff about, I wasn't spiritual. I wasn't looking for spirituality. I was just looking at myself, trying to understand myself. And it's telling me that we live forever, death is illusion, that there are beings here that don't have their best interest for the human race. They don't have any creativity. They don't have any light. I couldn't sleep. There was the dreams became very vivid. I got a huge amount of emotion, of pain of what had happened all to the human race. The loss of mother, to the marriage, and saw marriage as a prison, lots of things. So it was crazy for about 6 weeks. I was calling home going, there's aliens here. And my parents thought I'd gone nuts. They're like, oh my God,
Oh,
Becky,
yeah.
lost it. You hear those stories when people wake up. And then it calmed down. But I changed course. My life completely changed course. Found Dolores Cannon online, and I was listening to her, and I was like, oh my God, I was crying, I think, because truth when you hear truth, it kind of sets off your heart, because because we all share the same truth, of
Hmm.
what's happened to the planet. And so we hold that in our hearts. So when I listened to her, I was like, felt really connected. And then I came back home and I did a quantum healing hypnosis course with Dolores. She came to the UK. But it wasn't, my gifts were, I did reflexology. So it's where you massage feet and pick up things. And when I was doing the massages of people's feet, I'd pick up, uh, when I relaxed, I realized I was journeying. I didn't know what was happening then, but their consciousness was interacting with mine. So they were telling me things. So they would tell me about their life and what they were struggling with and what they need to talk about. So after the massage, I would talk to them and go, ABC, whatever they had told me, and there'd be lots of tears and, stuff that they hadn't been able to even speak to anybody about. So it became like a therapy. And then that's just developed over time. So my heart started to teach me that, one, that everybody's connected to your heart. So although we've not physically met, as our first day here, you're actually, when I relax, I'll be able to feel you in my heart. I'll be able to connect to you in my heart. You'll be able to come through. We're connected all to the same source. And then in that part of you that comes through knows everything about you, but started to teach me about the organs and how every organ is a creation of your mental and emotional well-being. Started to tell me about past lives, and also what I was doing, I was being attacked a lot by things outside of myself. And there's a lot of dealing with attacks, a lot of attacks. So I had to learn about the things that were attacking me, the reptilians, to technology, to government, like loads of government stuff. So it hasn't been an easy ride at all. It's been really difficult. But even in the attacks, because they would attack areas of the mind that had no light, that had just had trauma, and we all have that. And so the frequencies of that, they would activate, kind of thing. We naturally, how we evolve is people wake up and then they get triggered and somebody triggers them. And that word triggering is because something set off an insecurity or fear inside by somebody else. It's not the other person. That's really, they're helping you to look at yourself and understand that trigger, understand that fear or insecurity. But the government and the reptilians can just do this by force. They can go into your mind and do this. So I had to learn about that and the different attacks that they would do to me. Because and that's probably what also part of the programming, so they'd have access to me. So any time that I would release a blog or do something that they didn't like, I'd get attacked. So I
And
had to learn how the system works.
what did that feel like when you had an attack come on? What was the experience?
Oh, it'd be different. So it would depend where they hit me in the brain, because our brains are compartmentalized. So it depend on the trauma that they would hit. So they would work on the frequencies of the traumas that I had as a child. So I would go in complete fear. I'd be frightened of my surroundings, feel like somebody's out to try and kill me. Would feel lots of it'd be different each time. It depends where the brain where they would hit me in the brain, like fogginess. The other attacks would be they'd like literally drain all the light from me. So they would come in and take as much light as possible. So I'd wake up feeling like I'm a 90-year-old woman with no light at all. So and then I have to, rest, can't work. And then that you feel scared in your body. So basically I went through again basically what I went through as a child, but it was all deliberate by forces outside of me that didn't want me to succeed or help people or discover what consciousness is and how we evolve.
Yeah. There was an interesting point that you brought up. It's related to your awakening. You said that you had an awakening that you likened to like the experience of being in the Truman Show, to the point that you could even see the pixels of reality in front of you. And when I read that, it brought back a memory I had of where had eaten psilocybin mushrooms, and actually multiple times that I'd eaten it, and I saw this veil of pixels, literally, because I've put my face against an old TV screen before and looked at the pixels. They're perfectly geometrically symmetrical, lined up like little honeycombs. And I was even asking my friends, I'm like, are you guys getting this veil of pixels that's laid over everything? And at first they didn't say that, but he's like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Does this imply So is that what you meant when you said you saw the pixels? You were literally seeing like a veil of pixels just overlaid over
Yeah.
everything?
Yeah. It was like, because what's happening is that more during my awakening, more of my light's coming in. So I'm seeing the physical reality, but I'm like entering in, and the pixels are the masculine energy, the pixelated energies. That this is where technology comes from. They've based technology on what consciousness can do. So, and people, I think people are like, oh, reality is created from an AI construct and stuff. But no, reality is created from our masculine energy and our female energy. And the masculine energy is pixelated.
So that's where my mind gets twisted. That seems as though that implies that there's technology behind it, but only because my knowledge of pixels comes from, say, a TV screen or some
Yeah,
tool. So where do those pixels come from then?
that's the masculine energy. That's
Okay.
the masculine consciousness. So it's
And
like
it's just structured that way by what? The
masculine
intelligent
consciousness.
source?
Masculine. So from how I understand consciousness so far, consciousness is light, and in order to create physical reality, it separates. And the masculine consciousness, so it's always like light, feminine, and then it separates into masculine, and masculine is there to build the physical reality, and then the light comes in to bring it to life. But it's how am I gonna? Sorry, I've forgotten the question.
It was just what put those pixels there, and why is it necessary that reality be pixelated? And you were saying that's just, say, the structure of
The
masculine energy.
structure. So it will change, I feel, because the mental mind will change. So the mental mind that creates the physical reality is based on mathematics. So the pixelated is something to do with maths within the brain and how it projects outwardly. But the more we entwine within the heart, the maths will change within the brain, the structure will change, and it will be different. So we'll see different layers instead of it being the way it is at the moment. Okay, I'll have to do a deep dive for you and do a remote view, because when I'm in like my remote views, I can sort of understand it better for you.
Yeah.
I'll send it over.
But that's interesting that you associate that with masculine energy, because also in that same experience, I remember looking down at a plant and admiring the geometry of the plant. And it felt like from above me, I don't know, this wave of what I called fatherly energy. It was definitely what I associate to be a masculine energy. And I don't know what it was trying to tell me, but it comes up every time that I'm on the influence of mushrooms. Is this feels to me like a memory of the feeling I had when I was around my father, around my dad, this strength, safety, and security. And so I associate it with father and masculine. And the time that I saw the pixels and I'm staring at this plant, it was now like, at least the way I interpret it was, now this is your energy, because I was a father at that time. You're the father. This is the energy that's a part of you now. But I'm not explaining it very well, because it was bigger than that and more vague than that. But just that you say that I'm perceiving the pixelated veil, which is the structure of masculine energy, and having these downloads of a feeling of masculine energy. That's just interesting to me. I didn't connect that until you'd said that. Very interesting. But if people, because we didn't really get into the work you're doing with finding the light, and that's where you're helping others deal with the reality that we're living in now and how to connect to themselves, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So if people want to reach out to you there, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, my Patreon channel, um, I've got healing groups on that, and I do Q&As. Everyone can join a Q&A, so I don't have a limit on that. My healing groups, I do have limits, but everyone can come to a Q&A and ask me questions, so that's good fun. The one-to-ones, I am so booked up. So
Uh-huh.
I've stopped it at 6 months, and so every month uh, I'll release the appointments for the month in, so in the beginning of December, I'll release May's appointments for the one-to-ones. I also do seminars. So seminars you can book over my website, and I'll teach people how to connect to themselves, how to remote view themselves, connect to their hearts, connect to their past lives, connect to their bodies, see what illnesses they have, why the illnesses has occurred, because we create everything, even our illnesses. So I've got a seminar in January, it's 3 classes, and then another one in May. Yeah, so you can email me if you wish. But yeah, that's how you connect.
So the website is findingthelight.com, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. I I think when I searched Finding the Light, I always found Rebecca Barron, whether you were the first or, in the search, first, second, or third. It
Yeah,
wasn't too
it's
difficult
find
to
a light
find
dash.
you. But that's how they could, okay, findthelight-rb.com. Okay, because
Yeah.
I know that there, like you said, you're booked up. There are just so many people interested in this type of work because we're left with no other recourse than to start looking within, and people don't know how. I know that I speak for others because for myself, these things that you're like, oh, follow your heart, listen to your heart. Up until just recently, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I don't know how to do that.
Just a
People are
feeling.
looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
But
relaxing.
we get programmed from four years on not to feel, not to think for ourselves and how to behave, and we become addicted to just being told what to do. And work like yours is very important in the world. So thank you for doing that. I'm so glad that your experiences didn't destroy you, and in fact just pushed you into this space of strength that you have now, and as a beacon of light for others. And yeah, thank you for being on the show. And I'll put that in the show notes, and hopefully a bunch of people will reach out to you if you have time to see them. But before you go, I ask this of everybody: what gives you hope, and what message of hope do you have for others in this day and age?
Well, what gives me hope is that people are waking. There's people like you that are talking, and we're not being shot down. And there may be challenges, and that we are evolving, and that evolution is just going to get faster and faster. And so, although it's not televised on the main news, it's happening every day, every minute of every day. So we're going into a much better reality, a much more beautiful reality. However, it doesn't, one still has to do the work. So one still has to look at self, one has to, because you want to be that light, and but you can have that content and come out of survival and start to live, because that's where we want to be living.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.